Hi, in today's assignment, we will do a demo of LangGraph making use of Langsmith as a telemetry tool. We will develop a simple application in VS Code along with the tooling and installation. So you will get to see the entire assignment from the installation to the execution. We will also create a mechanism to see the visualization of the graph, and we will check the telemetry and other metrics data in Langsmith. Hi, I am Ashish Agarwal and welcome back to Coders Academy. A small note, this is not a sponsored video, it has been created for the sake of education. Now a small appeal. We notice that our channel is getting a lot of traction, our watch hours is gradually increasing. So if you like the content, do not forget to subscribe the channel and like the content. It provides me a lot of motivation to create such valuable videos for the audiences. Now without any delay, let's jump to today's video. So what is LangGraph? Let's go through the documentation together. So LangGraph is a low-level orchestration framework for building, managing and deploying long-running stateful agents. So basically a low-level orchestration framework that supports building, managing and deployment of stateful agents, long-running, okay? So what are its core benefits? Let's see. You can build agents that can persist through failures and can automatically resume from exactly where it left off, okay? So that basically allows you to have resiliency. It supports modification of the agent state, okay? So human in the loop is involved, so basically human oversight for inspecting and modifying the agent state. You can create truly stateful agents, okay, with support for short-term working memory. So short-term working memory is supported with reasoning and long-term persistent storage through sessions. Complex behavior of the agents can be implemented and visualized using the tracing of execution paths. So we in the example will show you the usage of Langsmith. So Langsmith is one tool that the LangChain ecosystem offers, which allows you to have tracing of your application. So what input went in, how many tokens was consumed, success or failure, what was the output, what is the model that was used. So all that telemetry information, we can see it in the Langsmith portal. So we will be using this in our assignment. So you can capture the state transitions, provide detailed runtime metrics. So this is the telemetry part I was talking about. Okay, and you can deploy sophisticated agent system, okay, in the production with infrastructure which is scalable and designed to handle unique challenges of stateful long running workflows. So these are the core benefits of making use of LangGraph. And from the ecosystem, you can make use of Langsmith. I already talked about it. LangGraph platform deploy and scale agents effortlessly, okay, for long running and stateful workflows. LangChain, as you know, this is the basic tooling that the LangChain ecosystem offers, which provides you integration and composable components to streamline the application development using LLMs, okay? Yeah, so this is basically the information about LangGraph. It's not a very complicated tool, but once you know the concepts very well, like nodes, edges, we'll talk about that in the next section of the video. All the code that we write in this particular assignment will be available on my GitHub repo. I will add the link to the GitHub repo in the description section of the video. Started, we'll visit the LangGraph documentation, okay, and we'll understand the basic concepts involved before starting any tutorial using LangGraph. So when we start anything, the first step in LangGraph is to create something called as a state graph. The state graph is nothing but an object that defines the structure of our graph. It's like a state machine, okay. Then we add nodes which represent the LLM and the functions, and finally we add something called as edges which specify the transition between those functions, okay. So let's take a look at the sample code for state graph. So we have something called as a class state which takes type dict as one of the parameters, and it has messages, which is a list. Okay, and then how do we create a state graph? We need to have an instance of state graph, and we pass it like graph builder equal to state graph, and we pass the created class here. Okay, so that's how we get an instance of state graph. Now once we have the state graph in place, we can also read this definition here. So when defining a graph, the first step is to define a state. We saw that. Now state includes the graph's schema and some functions that handle the updates to the state. So that is what a state is for the graph. The next step is we need to add a node to the graph. So what is a node? Node is nothing but a Python function which defines a unit of work. So basically any functionality that you want to have in the graph, you need to create a node for it. So what is the sample code for that? Say for example here what they have done is they have created a node called init chat model. They have passed in OpenAI as the model name, and that creates one node for them. Now the other example here is like they have a chatbot node which takes state as the input parameter and returns a list of messages after invoking that LLM. So this is the place where the actual invocation of the LLM happens, and then whatever response we get from there, that we pass on to the messages as a list. Okay, and then once you have this node created, which is basically a Python definition, right? That's what we read. It's a Python function which defines a unit of work. So this is that unit of work. This is the Python function. Now we need to add that node to the graph builder. So we created a graph builder in step 1. Now we need to add the node to that. So after we have done this, now we can proceed to the next step, which is basically adding an entry point. So how will LangGraph understand where does the graph start and where does it end? So that's where entry point comes into picture. So it defines the entry or the start of a graph, and that's how we create one, right? So graph builder dot add edge and start and the name of the node. Start is a reserved keyword, so using which LangGraph understands that okay, this is the first node in the graph I need to deal with. Okay, once you have the graph builder ready, a node is added to that, then we add an edge to the graph builder, and finally we do a compile. So graph builder dot compile, this compiles the graph. Okay, it creates a compiled graph so that we can invoke on our state. And this is the visualization of the graph. It's marked as optional because it's not a part of the functionality, but if you have a very complex mesh of the graphs, in such cases visualization comes in very handy. So typically they make use of Mermaid library to display the graph. We will be creating something similar in our example today, which will have a start state, an end state, and a node in the middle. Okay, and then nothing, that's all. I mean, this is how you can create a graph, and then you finally execute the graph. Okay, so I'll quickly revise the functionality and the steps for you. So we start our exercise by creating a state graph I mean. Once you have the state graph, you create an instance of it, then you add a new node to it. So you create a node which is basically a Python function along with a return of messages, and inside that we invoke the LLM. Then you add that node to the graph builder. You define an entry point along with an edge here. So basically graph builder dot add edge, and start is a reserve keyword, and then we add the node to it. You compile a graph. Visualization is optional, but then you can run the particular graph. Okay, so these are the steps involved. Everybody needs to be aware about these concepts, but once you are clear about it, it's very simple and easy to create tutorials using LangGraph. So we'll start by visiting Langsmith and get an API key. So we go to the settings, get the API key. I have already configured my key here, but you can do create key, get the pat access token, and create API key. So once you get the key, you should copy it and keep it ready for our code. Now we go to the PowerShell and we type the command uv init and we give the project name. demo LangGraph tutorial. Then we cd into this project. In this project, now we need to add the packages relevant for the product. It's called LangGraph LangSmith, Google Generative AI, Python.NET, and Pillow. So we will be using Gemini for this code. Now we'll open the project in VS Code. So these are the files that it has created. It has created a default virtual environment. There's a main.py toml file with all the packages and dependencies, a readme file, and a log file. Now we'll create an environment file with all the API keys that we have in the project. So you need to copy your keys and paste it there. Now we'll create a simple graph.py file with all the dependencies. We'll define the state, a graph state, initialize our Gemini model. We'll define the nodes, okay, and then we'll build the graph. So these are the 4 or 5 steps that are required to start with. So this will be a single node, okay, where our query will be what is LangGraph, okay. So this is the model that we are using along with the API key, and there will be a generate response from the defined nodes, okay. Now we'll test this particular workflow. So we'll add the following code where we will invoke this py file. So what is the query we are asking? What is the LangGraph? And this will be our starting node, okay, and we will expect a response from LangGraph. Now we'll open the terminal, okay. We'll first activate our virtual environment. So after activating our virtual environment, we'll say uv run simplegraph.py. Okay. So as you can see, there is some error here. So it is not able to find a module called LangChain Google Gen AI. So it looks like we need to add one more module as a dependency. So we'll go to our PowerShell and we'll add that module uv add LangChain Google Gen AI. Okay. So we'll try it again. uv run simplegraph.py. So you can see our query was what is LangGraph. So we should get an answer on that. Yes. So we have received an answer from the model, and it has given us an elaborate discussion or a description about the LangGraph module. What is it, when to use it, its core concepts, things like that. So you can pause the video and read it if you wish. Now we go back to the Langsmith URL, okay, just to see the traces. So you see our project there, demo LangGraph tutorial. So it created that project and there is one invocation there. Open that. You can see the input message and the output response on the Langsmith URL here, okay. So these are the traces, and it has taken 7 seconds to execute our request, and the number of tokens consumed along with a success message, okay. So this is the timing, and there is a success message there along with the tokens that it has consumed. Now what we'll try to do is we'll try to display the graph in the form of HTML. So I've added this code here, a small function called display graph HTML, okay. So we'll provide the file name there, and we will invoke this function from the program. So display graph HTML, we pass that on, and once that is executed, we should be able to see a separate file in the folder structure. So let's see for that. Yeah, so it has created a graph.html file. If you see it on the folder structure, yeah, there it is. Let's try to open that in a browser. Yeah, so this displays our LangGraph graph, basically the structure of the graph. So it has generated that and two nodes, start and end. Okay. Now let's go back to Langsmith and see if we get another invocation there, just to be doubly sure. So we open our project there. Yes, you see a second invocation there, which is successful. There's an input message there. There's an output response there, a success message, time taken, and the model name as well. Okay.